All right, so let's start with the scene. It's 1909, and we're inside this packed, just incredibly tense courtroom in Bombay.
Right, the atmosphere is just thick.
Exactly. You have this fierce, highly skilled lawyer right in the middle of a brutal cross-examination. He's got the opposing witness completely on the ropes.
And the whole room is just, hanging on his every word.
Yeah. And then right in the middle of this high-stakes maneuvering, someone quietly walks up to the lawyer, and they hand him a small, folded note.
Stops for a second, reads it, and, well, his expression just doesn't change, not even a fraction.
Not at all. He silently pockets the piece of paper, turns right back to the witness, and finishes the cross-examination.
Which is just, it's wild.
Not only does he finish it, he completely dismantles the opposition, decisively wins the case. And only after the proceedings end, when the room is clearing out, does he turn to his colleagues and break the news.
Right.
The note informed him that his wife, Haverba, had just died during emergency surgery.
It is a staggering level of mental control.
Mm-hmm.
To receive news that devastating and just compartmentalize it entirely until the job is done, it really defies normal human reaction.
It's like your entire world collapsing, but you refuse to drop a single plate until your shift is over. That level of stoicism is almost superhuman.
It really is.
And it perfectly encapsulates the man we are unpacking today. Welcome to this deep dive for pplpod. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Yeah, welcome.
Because today we are looking at the life, the legacy, and the sheer unfiltered willpower of Vallabhbhai Patel, universally known as Sardar Patel.
Or the Iron Man of India.
The Iron Man,
Yeah.
exactly. When you look through the historical sources we've gathered for you today, a very clear portrait emerges.
Yeah, Patel was the newly independent nation's first deputy prime minister and home minister, but more fundamentally, he was the absolute bedrock of modern India.
Which is fascinating because when we think about the Indian independence movement, we usually think of like the philosophical souls, right?
Right.
We picture Gandhi's nonviolent idealism or Nehru's soaring poetic vision. But Patel wasn't a poet.
No, not at all. Patel provided the logistics. He provided the strategy, the enforcement, and the structural glue.
Yeah.
Without him doing the heavy lifting, the geographical map of modern India literally would not exist.
Revolutions absolutely require visionaries to inspire the masses, sure. But they also require architects to build the new house once the old one is torn down.
And Patel was the architect. To understand how he developed that intensely practical mindset, we really have to look at his childhood in the countryside of Gujarat.
I want to dig into that because his early life explains so much of that courtroom stoicism we just talked about. How does a kid become so entirely self-sufficient?
Well, the sources mention this one anecdote from his youth where he developed a really painful boil.
Oh, man.
Yeah. The local barber was supposed to lance it, but the guy was trembling too much. He was afraid to hurt him.
So what does he do?
Patel just takes the instrument right out of the man's hand and lances his own boil without a second thought.
Jeez, that is intense.
Right. He was entirely self-reliant. And yet, despite that fierce independence, the people around him actually considered him a late bloomer.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He didn't pass his matriculation exams until he was 22 years old. His elders viewed him as, unambitious. They assumed he was destined for some commonplace, low-level job.
Which is wild in hindsight. But he was actually harboring this secret, highly structured plan. He wanted to become a lawyer.
And he didn't go to some prestigious academy to do it either.
No, he spent years away from his family, essentially teaching himself the law.
Yeah, he would borrow books from practicing lawyers, study them obsessively, and he ended up passing his exams in just 2 years.
Wow.
From there, he sets up a household and spends years painstakingly saving money to fulfill his ultimate goal, traveling to England to become a full-fledged barrister.
But then we get to the ticket mix-up, which I found totally baffling.
Yeah, this is a crazy story.
He saves up all this money, and the pass and ticket to England finally arrive in the mail. But they are addressed to Vijay Patel.
Right. And Vallabhbhai has an older brother named Vithalbhai, who is also, technically, a Vijay Patel.
And the older brother decides he wants to use the ticket. He argues to the family that it would be highly disreputable and embarrassing for the younger brother to travel to England before the older brother had the chance.
Yeah, it was a whole reputation thing.
I have to pause here. If I save up for years and my brother pulls rank based on a mail typo and social reputation, I am fighting him for that ticket.
Oh, absolutely.
But Patel just hands it over. Why? Does he just lack a spine at this point in his life?
No, it wasn't a lack of spine at all. It was a profound submission to structure. For
Interesting.
Patel, his dedication to duty and family hierarchy completely superseded his own personal ambition. In his worldview, the collective institution, in this case, the family's honor, was always more important than the individual's desire.
Wow.
And that specific trait would go on to define his entire political career.
He does eventually make it to England, though, at age 36, and he crushes it.
He really does.
He finishes a 36-month course at the Middle Temple in just 30 months, tops his class despite having no college background, and comes back to Ahmedabad as a highly successful barrister.
Yeah, he's wearing European-style suits, adopting urbane mannerisms, playing bridge at the local club, and making serious money.
So what shifts a guy who is comfortably enjoying immense wealth into a leader of a grassroots revolution?
The primary catalyst is his meeting with Mahatma Gandhi in 1917. Gandhi was looking for a capable Gujarati activist to devote themselves completely to the Kheda peasant struggle.
Right, and this was a movement against punishing British taxation during a period of severe hardship, wasn't it?
Exactly. When Patel heard Gandhi speak, he volunteered to lead the effort, though he later admitted it required intense personal contemplation.
Because he knew what it meant.
Yeah, he understood perfectly well that he was abandoning his lucrative career.
He didn't just abandon it, though. He physically burned it.
Literally.
He organized bonfires where he threw in all his English-style clothes and switched entirely to wearing khadi, the locally produced hand-spun cotton.
It was a massive statement.
But I want to understand the mechanics of this activism. We usually picture these independence movements as people marching peacefully or staging sit-ins.
Sure, that's the classic image.
But Patel was doing something far more complex during the Kheda and Bardoli tax revolts, wasn't he?
Oh, much more complex. When you look at the Bardoli Satyagraha in 1928, the region was facing a massive, steep tax hike right in the middle of a famine.
Which is just brutal timing.
It was. So Patel initiated a complete denial of taxes. The British government responded by sending in police squads to confiscate property, farm animals, and land to cover the missing taxes.
Right, so how do you fight that without using weapons? If the empire's police show up to take a village as cattle, how does a peaceful organizer actually stop them?
By building a highly sophisticated shadow supply chain.
A shadow supply chain.
Yeah. Patel didn't just give speeches on a soapbox. He organized a village-by-village information network. When his scouts heard the tax collectors were coming, the network would alert the villagers.
Wait, so they would physically hide the cattle?
Exactly. They moved cattle, hid valuables, and essentially ran an underground economy right under the noses of the British administration.
That is brilliant.
The organization was so impenetrable and the resistance so unified that the government couldn't collect anything. Eventually, the British government completely caved.
Wow.
They repealed the tax hike and returned the seized land. And it was during this successful 1928 rebellion that the women of Bardoli first gave Patel the title Sardar, meaning chief.
So the bridge-playing lawyer is now Sardar Patel, the chief logistics officer of the grassroots movement.
Exactly.
And as he rises to the top of the Indian National Congress, his supreme organizational skills naturally cause friction. He is the ultimate pragmatist operating in a sea of idealists.
Yeah, he became the main fundraiser and the chairman of the Central Parliamentary Board.
Yeah.
His job was selecting candidates and funding elections.
This is a very grounded, practical job.
Right. Because he was focused entirely on the concrete machinery of winning independence, he frequently clashed with leaders who were more focused on ideology.
Including a massive legal battle with Subhas Chandra Bose. This part of the source material completely surprised me.
Oh, the lawsuit over the will.
Yeah. I know Patel was meticulous, but taking another major independence figure to court seems incredibly divisive.
It really reveals how Patel viewed the law and procedure. You remember Patel's older brother, Vallabhbhai, the one who took the boat ticket?
Yeah, the ticket thief.
Well, when Vallabhbhai died in Geneva in 1933, Subhas Chandra Bose had been his primary caregiver. Vallabhbhai left a will, bequeathing 3/4 of his money to Bose, specifically to promote India's cause abroad.
And Patel questions the validity of the document. He points out it wasn't attested by a doctor, he questions the witnesses, and he basically drags Bose into a year-long legal battle over his own brother's will.
Yeah, he did.
The courts eventually rule in Patel's favor, declaring the estate must go to the legal heirs. But here's the twist. Patel doesn't keep a single cent of it.
Not a penny.
He promptly hands all the money over to the Vallabhbhai Memorial Trust.
Because for Patel, It was never about the money. It was about procedure and principle.
Right.
He fundamentally distrusted Bose's militant tactics, feeling they strayed from Gandhi's principles. But more importantly, Patel could not abide a legally dubious document dictating the flow of funds.
He was definitely not a rubber stamp.
No. He also clashed frequently with Jawaharlal Nehru, aggressively opposing declarations of socialism because he felt sweeping economic ideologies were a distraction from the single immediate goal of independence.
Despite being this hard-nosed pragmatist, though, the sources show he had a deeply affectionate side, especially with Gandhi.
Oh, absolutely.
They spent significant time in prison together, notably at the Yerabda Central Jail in 1932. The sources describe their relationship as a profound elder and younger brother bond.
They read Hindu epics, cracked jokes, and Gandhi actually taught Patel Sanskrit while they were behind bars.
That bond was the emotional core of Patel's life. But his devotion to Gandhi didn't stop him from fiercely disagreeing with him when he felt the strategy was wrong.
That's true.
A prime example of this pragmatism is his stance during the Quit India movement in 1942.
Yeah, World War II is raging. The British are severely occupied. Nehru and several other leaders are hesitant to launch an all-out rebellion while the world is fighting fascism.
Right. So why was Patel the one pushing so hard for an immediate uprising?
He looked at the geopolitical reality. The British were retreating from Singapore and Burma in the face of the Japanese advance.
Oh, I see.
Patel argued that British power was visibly weakening, and if India didn't strike then, the moment might never return. He delivered an electrifying speech to over 100,000 people at Gowalia Tank in Bombay, calling it the opportunity of a lifetime.
And his organizing work leading up to that moment is credited with ensuring the rebellion's massive scale. He raised funds, prepared a secondary tier of leadership in case the primary leaders were arrested.
Which they were.
Yeah. And he built the infrastructure for mass resistance. That rebellion ultimately pushed the British to realize their rule was financially and militarily unsustainable.
But when independence finally becomes a reality, the victory is deeply fractured. And this leads us to perhaps the most agonizing calculation of Patel's life: the partition of India.
Our sources show that Patel was one of the first major Congress leaders to accept the partition of the subcontinent into two separate nations, India and Pakistan.
Yeah, Gandhi was anguished by this. Nehru was highly resistant.
So how did Patel arrive at this conclusion? What was the math he was doing in his head?
He was looking at the reality of a weak central government. The British were leaving, and the proposed plans for a united India involved a very loose federal structure to appease different factions.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a strong national government.
Right. Patel realized that trying to hold together a bitterly divided population alongside hundreds of independent princely states with a weak central authority, well, it would result in permanent civil war.
It's like a surgeon looking at a patient and realizing the only way to save the body is to amputate a limb.
That's a good way to put it.
It is a brutal, horrific choice. But in his intensely practical mind, it was the only math that prevented total collapse and fragmentation.
The human cost of that decision was staggering, though. When the borders were drawn, between 500,000 and 1 million people died in the ensuing communal violence.
And over 15 million became refugees.
Yeah. Patel, as Home Minister, had to deal with the fallout. He took the lead in organizing relief, establishing refugee camps, and calling in the army to enforce strict curfews to stop the rioting.
And right in the middle of this nightmare, we get the Amritsar moment, which is really a masterclass in crisis leadership.
It is. Patel received intelligence that massive groups of Sikhs were organizing to attack Muslim refugee convoys heading toward Pakistan.
And instead of just sending orders from Delhi, Patel hurries directly to Amritsar.
He stands before a crowd of approximately 200,000 angry, heavily armed Sikh and Hindu refugees.
You have to picture this. 200,000 traumatized people who have just lost their homes, their livelihoods, and in many cases, their families. Standing in front of them is incredibly dangerous.
Exactly.
How on earth does he de-escalate that?
He appealed to their sense of honor, and he offered a practical exchange. He told them that attacking helpless, fleeing people was an act of cowardice, not bravery.
That takes guts to say to an armed mob.
It does. He pleaded with them to stop the cycle of violence and guarantee the safe passage of the Muslim refugees. In exchange, he practically guaranteed that if they showed restraint, the Indian government would have the moral and diplomatic leverage to force Pakistan to ensure the safe passage of Hindus and Sikhs coming the other way.
He basically turns the pure emotion into a tangible, strategic negotiation.
Exactly.
And amazingly, the crowd listens. Following his speech, the coordinated attacks in that specific area stopped.
But, his position required him to make enemies everywhere. During partition, Gandhi and Nehru felt he was too hardline.
Right. And many Hindu and Sikh leaders accused him of failing to protect their communities in Pakistan.
Meanwhile, Muslim leaders accused him of neglecting the security of Muslims within India. We have to be impartial here and look at all sides. He was the man in the arena, absorbing the anger from everyone while making the cold, unpopular decisions required to restore basic order.
But stopping the immediate bloodshed was only half the battle. He now had to look at a map that was essentially shattered into hundreds of pieces.
Of the integration.
When the British left, they released 565 self-governing princely states from their paramountcy. 565 individual kingdoms that now had the legal choice to join India, join Pakistan, or declare themselves independent nations.
If those states didn't integrate, the map of India would look like Swiss cheese.
Totally.
You would have independent countries sitting right in the middle of Indian territory, each with their own private armies and foreign policies. It would be entirely unmanageable.
This is why historians often refer to Patel as the Bismarck of India, isn't it?
Yes. Just as Otto von Bismarck unified the fractured German states in the 19th century, Patel had to unify an entire subcontinent.
But how do you convince 565 monarchs to voluntarily give up their crowns?
You use diplomacy, backed by the implicit threat of force. He started by inviting the monarchs to lunch and tea at his home in Delhi.
Like a casual sit-down.
Yeah, he appealed to their patriotism, but he also offered highly favorable terms called privy purses.
Let's clarify that for everyone. What exactly is a privy purse in this context?
It was essentially a guaranteed tax-free state pension.
Okay.
Patel promised these rulers that if they signed the instrument of accession, giving control of their defense, foreign affairs, and communications to the Indian government, they would maintain their titles, their personal properties, and receive a handsome annual payout from the state.
So he basically buys their compliance. It's a brilliant carrot. But what happened when diplomacy failed?
When monarchs refused, Patel did not hesitate to use the stick. Take Junagadh, for example.
Okay, what happened there?
The ruler, the Nawab, decided to accede to Pakistan, even though his state was not geographically connected to Pakistan and the population was overwhelmingly Hindu.
Right, letting a pocket of Pakistani territory exist deep inside Western India was a strategic nightmare.
Exactly. So Patel sends in the Indian army. The Nawab flees to Pakistan, and a subsequent plebiscite showed a 99.5% vote by the people to merge with India.
Wow. And then there was the much larger problem of Hyderabad.
Hyderabad was massive. It was the largest princely state right in the belly of southern India. The ruler, the Nizam, wanted independence, and his loyalist paramilitary forces, the Razakars, were organizing violent campaigns against the population.
And Patel viewed an independent Hyderabad as an intolerable security threat.
He did.
Yeah.
In September 1948, he authorized military action. The Indian army launched an invasion, rapidly defeated the Razakars, and forced the Nizam to sign the accession.
So through this mix of diplomatic charm and raw military power, Patel literally stitched the country's borders together.
He really did. But borders are just lines on a map. Patel knew that politicians come and go and governments change.
Right.
To keep a country of that size stable, he believed he needed something permanent, something he called the steel frame.
The steel frame refers to the modern All India services, right? The civil servants, administrators, and police officers who run the day-to-day operations of the government.
Yes. Patel is considered the patron saint of India's civil services.
Why was he so obsessed with bureaucrats, though?
Because he understood that a democracy in its infancy is incredibly fragile. He argued fiercely in the Constituent Assembly that without an independent, impartial, and incorruptible administrative backbone, the country would descend into chaos.
That makes sense.
He insisted on legally protecting the terms and privileges of civil servants in the Constitution so that they could administer the law and speak their minds without fear of political retaliation.
Speaking of administering the law, we see his strict adherence to constitutional frameworks following the darkest moment of this era. In January 1948, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by Nathuram Godse, a Hindutva activist.
Yeah. And following the assassination, Patel, acting in his capacity as Home Minister, immediately banned the Hindu nationalist organization, the RSS, and ordered the arrest of many of his prominent leaders.
The government stated that the ban was necessary because some members of the organization had reportedly expressed joy after Gandhi's death and were promoting violence. We're just reporting what the sources say here.
Right. The legal process plays out, and the Supreme Court later acquitted the charged RSS leaders of the conspiracy charge regarding the assassination.
The head of the RSS, M.S. Gulwalkar, then asks Prime Minister Nehru to lift the ban. And Nehru passes the ultimate decision to Patel.
And Patel essentially says, I will lift the ban, but I have absolute preconditions.
Again, Patel operates like a structural architect. He demanded the RSS adopt a formal, written, and public constitution.
Yeah, he demanded they pledge explicit loyalty to the Constitution of India, accept the tricolor as the national flag, officially renounce violence and secrecy, and hold internal democratic elections.
Gulwalkar initially resisted, launching an agitation and getting imprisoned again. But eventually, the organization amended its constitution according to most of Patel's stipulations, and the ban was lifted in July 1949.
Patel wasn't afraid to leverage the full power of the state to force organizations to operate within the legal constitutional framework.
But we have to acknowledge the incredible personal toll all of this heavy lifting took on him. The death of Gandhi absolutely devastated Patel.
It did. Within 2 months of the assassination, Patel suffered a major heart attack.
Wow.
He later attributed it to the massive grief he had bottled up over losing the man who was essentially his mentor and father figure.
There's that stoicism again, bottling up the grief so he could keep the country running. He pushed his body to the absolute limit. In fact, in 1949, he survives a plane crash.
Oh, it's an incredible story. He was in a Royal Indian Air Force plane flying over Rajasthan. The engine loses power, and the pilot is forced to make an emergency landing in a remote desert area.
And because they lost radio contact, the whole country thought the deputy prime minister was dead.
But he just walks away from it, tracks down a nearby village, and makes it back to Delhi. Parliament literally stops its session for half an hour to give him a standing ovation.
That is wild. Despite his resilience, though, his health was failing rapidly. By the summer of 1949, he was coughing blood. By late 1950, he was frequently losing consciousness.
Yeah, his body was just giving out.
Finally, on December 15, 1950, he suffered a second massive heart attack and passed away in Bombay. The public mourning was unprecedented. 1 million people attended his cremation.
And true to his pragmatic, unpretentious nature, at his daughter's request, he was cremated like a common man in the exact same place his wife and brother had been cremated years before.
Decades later, the Indian government built the ultimate physical tribute to him, the Statue of Unity in his home state of Gujarat.
At 182 meters, it is literally the tallest statue in the world.
It's a massive, towering representation of his title as the Iron Man.
It is a fitting monument. Patel's life demonstrates a crucial historical reality. Revolutions are not won solely by poets and philosophers.
No, they aren't.
They are secured by the pragmatists. They are secured by the people willing to do the unglamorous heavy lifting of building institutions, negotiating complex borders, and establishing the mundane laws that actually allow a society to function.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Next time you look around at the civil infrastructure, the borders of your country, and the quiet bureaucracies that keep your own society running, take a moment to think about how they got there.
It's easy to take it for granted.
It really is. We so often celebrate the loud visionaries who draw the beautiful blueprints, but how often do we recognize the stoic architects who actually mixed the mortar and laid the bricks? The ones whose personal worlds might be collapsing around them, but who refuse to drop a single plate until the shift is over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.